Joining us is a lady who is no stranger to the Observer. We haven't heard from her in a while, touch base, but it's, I think the time is right now more better than ever. Let me say a pleasant good evening to the Public Service Association First Vice President, Ms. Felicia Thomas. Pleasant good evening, ma'am.
Pleasant good evening to you, Mikey, and your viewers. Pleasant good evening, everyone.
Yes. Well, a lot has taken place. The budget presentation, of course, for 2025. A lot, of course, was said in 5 hours and some minutes. And looking at it, of course, I don't know what your takeaway would be, but it has been said by many weighing in on it that it was quite insulting, the 5% and $2 on minimum wage. According to the opposition leader, Kamala Prasad-Visesa, she says it's an insult to offer 5% to workers. Undoubtedly, some PNM-aligned unions will praise this and readily accept. But the majority of workers know that the cost of living has increased tremendously, and this additional 1% is an insult. What say you?
Well, Mikey, when I heard the budget statement and the comments of the Minister of Finance, I was wondering if I was in a meeting with the CPO, because I didn't know that the Minister of Finance has taken up the role as CPO and now playing negotiator. But more than that, I had no interest in what the Minister of Finance said. What I had keen interest in, is what the leader of the opposition said. And what she said is that her offer to public officers is 10%. And that is what piqued my interest, because we are now talking about an offer to workers that now seems to be more respectable. And more than just a 10% offer, Mikey, it is a 10% offer with the consolidation of COLA. So at this point, I have no interest in what the Minister of Finance has attempted to shove down the throats of the trade unions in their usual style. I have no interest in that. What I'm interested in is hearing more from the opposition leader on this 10% with the consolidation of COLA. And let me even clarify that further. That offer 5%, so-called offer 5% from the Minister of Finance, it is for the period 2022. And what the opposition is speaking about is a 10% offer that replaces 4%. So the government has placed on the table, has shoved down the throats of several unions, 002, 002, 4% over 2 periods without the consolidation of COLA. And they continue to challenge the PSA and the UGFW in the courts so that they can shove that offer down our throats, and we have rejected that and we will continue to reject it. What I've heard from the opposition is that they reject that 4% without the consolidation of COLA, just like the PSA and the NUGFW, and that their offer is 10% with the consolidation of COLA. That is what I'm interested in.
Yeah, and I think one would gravitate to something that's actually going to make sense. I mean, isn't that this, we've spoken before, of course, right here on The Observer, and I think we concluded to the fact that this administration, this current administration, is not union-friendly, not worker-friendly. Taking that in consideration, why is there such a disconnect? Because the opposition leader also went on to say it's an insult, compounded with a combined increase of transport, taxes, higher utility rates, land and house prices, rents, security, property tax, and of course the list goes on and on. I mean, why make an offer knowing quite well that many of these workers are just simply trying to keep their head above water, and they're still working, some of them basically on salaries from 2002 or 2007, as the case may be. Why is there such a disconnection?
Well, the disconnect comes because we are dealing with a government that does not care about more than just workers, but citizens of this country. We have not seen anything remotely close to a government that is interested in taking care of its people. That is what we are faced with. We are faced with a government that does not care about its citizens. They have adopted this approach of take it or leave it. We shoving it down your throat whether you like it or not. It's my way or the highway. And if that is the approach of this government, well then we say to them, you have to go. We will not tolerate, or we will not continue to try to engage with a government that is not interested in engaging in any meaningful way.
Yeah. Now, if we look basically at the TTRA, I mean, government is beating its chest and saying, of course, based on the judgment of the Privy Council, everything went in their favor. And for many people who were simply on the outside looking in and wasn't able to actually connect the dots, if you can, please guide us as to what this judgment was. I mean, you made it quite, you said that you feel vindicated in the pursuit of this matter. Though not successful, the judgment has confirmed and agreed with some of the worst fears and suspicions. And the PSA therefore calls upon the Minister of Finance to pay careful attention to the concerns expressed by the Privy Council in its judgment. Tell us, what are those major concerns?
Well, Mikey, before I touch on that, let me put a little context to this whole TTRA issue. Because if we recall, this was another matter that was shoved down the throats of workers and citizens of this country. If you recall, in taking this act to the parliament, that in order to get this act passed, they did not have the support of the opposition, and therefore they would have removed certain aspects of the act so that they would not need the majority to support the act. And they would have done what they needed to do. They had the act passed. This act came into effect in 2021. The PSA would have jumped into action in 2022 when they tried to enact Section 18 of the Act, which would have the workers make decisions in terms of their future, their lives, making a decision where they had no information, where they refused to engage with the PSA as the recognized union on behalf of these workers. And we would have jumped into action. And what we did was we challenged the constitutionality of the TTRA Act, the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority Act. In challenging it, we were not successful at the court, but the court would have made some statements which was referenced in that bulletin, Mikey. And we continue today to be in a position where those workers are still unable to make an informed decision. So we are now getting feedback from the CPO in relation to, as we said, we would have reached out to the CPO on more than one occasion. We met with the CPO, and the CPO admitted that he had no information in relation to the very same questions that the workers were asking, that we are being asked to make a decision on our future, and there were no answers. So, for example, the voluntary retirement package, that was not negotiated between the PSA and the CPO, and therefore the workers were not in a position to make any decision in relation to whether or not they wanted a visa to transfer into the TTRA in no less favorable terms and conditions. What were those no less favorable terms and conditions? They could not answer those questions. We had persons from the membership writing under the Freedom of Information Act requesting information in relation to the structure of the enforcement unit, that information was not available to be provided. And so many other things that were not in place, but workers were being asked and are still being asked to make a decision. The membership of the TTRA of the BIR and Customs Excise Division, they have stood their ground, and I must commend them for that. They have stood their ground. They have demanded that these bodies meet and treat with their union. They have stood behind the union, and more than that, they have said in the action taken in relation to challenging the constitutionality of the TTRA that they will not sit back and allow their lives and their livelihoods to be destroyed without a fight. And Mikey, that fight continues.
Yeah, and just to let the viewing public know that the TTRA was meant to replace the Customs and Excise Division, CD, and the Inland Revenue Division.
Correct.
But the thing about it is that the judgment is also critical of the allocation of powers between the divisions of the TTRA, and I guess this was outlined to prevent any sort of political interference.
Well, I mean, it says so. So they make reference to the enforcement division. But Mikey, let me say plainly that we know that does not exist. Once an authority is formed within this country, there is going to be maximum political interference. These divisions are being removed from the protection they have under the public service, and they are now being placed under the direct influence of the Minister of Finance. That reeks of political interference. So as much as they say that there's no political interference, we know differently, Mikey. That does not exist in Trinidad and Tobago, where there are authorities.
And especially in the last almost 10 years, we've seen many things play out where many of those offices that are deemed to be independent have been compromised. So,
of course.
Yeah, that is clear. So at least I want the viewers to understand that the PSA is not standing in the way or trying to hinder the fact that, modernizing revenue collection in this country. Basically, what you're asking for is checks and balances and to ensure that this entire process would be, of course, transparent.
More than transparent, yes, Mikey, but what we are fighting for is protection of the rights of workers. It cannot be that workers in this country do not have a voice. They are being ignored. This government has taken an approach of take it or leave it. What I say goes. And that cannot be the case. The PSA will continue to expend all of its resources available to defend workers' rights. These workers have a right. They are making a decision. They are being asked to make a decision that impacts their lives. And more than just the individual worker, we are talking about the lives of their family members, citizens of this country. And then we question ourselves when we allow the government to take action like this, that we sit back and wonder why crime is out of control in this country. It is because we have a government that is out of control and does not care about their actions, the consequences of their actions, and the impact on the citizens of this country.
And I respect that. I honestly, comrade, I respect that. But at the same time as well, union leaders do make up the numbers as far as citizens in this country. They understand the reality. I don't believe they can be disconnected if they're representing the interests of the working class. No way should they be disconnected. And I don't want to bring you into any sort of confrontation with any other union leader. But one has to say right out that too many of them has played games. They mounted this lion, and now it's too late as far as to disembark. Many of them have played games. And if I take you back to May Day of this year, when you said, comrade, that
Yes.
workers must raise their voices, realizing that inequality persists and employers exploit and marginalize workers. You went
Yes.
on to say that workers must demand dignity and respect. And you said
Absolutely.
that if they had one voice, they would become an unstoppable force for change. Why is it that your ideals are not being shared by other people in other unions?
Well, Mikey, I wouldn't want to speak for the leadership of any other union. What I would say is that the union and the leadership of the union is guided by its membership. When the PSA takes a position, it is because we have engaged our membership, and the position we are advancing is not the position of the president or the executive of the union. It is a position of the membership. After we have consulted, that is the position we take forward. So I wouldn't want to speak on the leadership of any other union because they may very well be acting on the instruction and directive of their membership. So while the PSA has its position, just like other unions share our views, there are other unions that don't, and that may be guided by their membership.
Is it at some point in time it's part of the strategy to wear these workers out, that they just simply throw in the flag and say, listen, we surrender, whatever is on the table, we simply just have to take it? But there's a price to pay for all of that, because you also said that this struggle was not only for the workers that exist now, but also for the children of the future. And if you're going to sell out now, if you're going to give up now, if you're simply going to throw in the towel, then what are you going to have to offer those future children?
And Mikey, that is what our membership has understood. Our membership has understood that, and we continue to remind them that what we enjoy today is not as a result of our fight. It is as a result of the fight that was fought, those fights that were fought by our parents and grandparents, and we are reaping the benefits of their fight. We have a responsibility today, Mikey, to create and leave a better working environment for our children. And our membership has held on to that, understanding that what we are building today, what we are fighting for today, it is not for us. It is for our children and their children. So it is about leaving a legacy, an inheritance, something that our children can be proud of. So when we say no to 4%, it is because we understand it has greater meaning than financial. It has an impact on our children's future. How do we provide for them?
That's a very good question. But I have to ask you, I mean, at this point in time in this battle, are you saying that, listen, we are just simply observers of injustice? I mean, the injustice against collective bargaining, against the democratic institutions, decent jobs, decent job environments, you name it. You're looking upon all that is taking place. When is that big move going to come? When is that push going to come and say, listen, we've had enough. You're not accommodating us. You're not doing anything as far as within our interests or what we are concerned about getting resolved. And you are turning a blind eye to the fact that we, the working class, are suffering and unhappy. When is that message, once and for all, is going to be sent?
Well, Mikey, I'm glad that you asked that question, because on the heels of May Day, we had Labor Day, and the PSA representatives of workers and treat with workers issues, then they will be replaced. And we said to our membership that we will be meeting with the UNC, and we have been meeting with the UNC. And I am saying it now publicly, that the solution to the issues we are facing is not to sit back the next election, we have a responsibility to ensure that who is sitting at the helm of this country on the conclusion of the next general election is a government that will take care of workers. And if we are clear, I am clear that that political party, that government cannot be a PNM government. It has to be a UNC government. We have heard from the UNC what they are willing to do on behalf of workers, and we will ensure that they are in office to hold to their word.
And you know, let's say, looking at it, just envisioning another 5 years. I mean, what's going to happen there? Because we're at a point where trade unions, which has always been an asset to the working class, is viewed as a liability by this current administration. As far as state enterprises, what have you, whatever government wants to do, they simply want to ensure that these enterprises have no representation for workers. Even to the point, as we speak today, the recognition process that would allow all workers to join a trade union is being delayed. And so time is definitely the essence here. Time is against you. Have you envisioned another 5 years? What would happen then?
Mikey, if this country, and I'm saying the country, if this country were to endure another 5 years under the leadership of the PNM, we will not survive. This country will not survive. It is more than just the trade union movement. I'm saying this country will not survive. People, citizens of this country are suffering daily. People are crying out for help, and help is not coming. We have a government that just turns away from the issues plaguing the country as though that they are not the ones charged with the responsibility to treat with the issues of the citizens of the country. If we were to endure another 5 years of this PNM government, this country will not survive.
Yeah, and I think that in itself, many people echo those sentiments. And again, the working class is going to be at the bottom of the entire economic pool, and that in itself is totally unfair. I think people have lost the fact of what the union represents, because this administration has been able to play it out as a villain and again as a liability that serves no purpose. How do you now get back, and I'm sure it's a challenge, how do you get back for people to understand that your presence is not just needed, but it is of course mandatory in order to buffer that between government and the rights of workers?
I don't think that is lost, Mikey. I think now more than ever, workers are crying out and they are calling upon the unions to stand in the gap and defend them. So more than ever, if this PNM government felt as though that their strategies were strategies that were going to cause workers to turn away from the union, that has not been the case. What we are seeing is workers running into the arms of the unions because they have recognized the abuse being meted out to workers under this government.
All right, closing comments, go right ahead.
Closing comments, Mikey, this is a call for workers throughout the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago, more than just workers, citizens of this country, to wake up. Wake up and understand that each and every one of us, we have a responsibility to ensure that change takes place in this country. Change takes place, and it happens not for the few, but for the many. And that responsibility is when that election bell is called, that we come out, and I'm saying plainly, Mikey, who we have to vote for. The PNM must go, and if the PNM must go, the UNC must come into office to champion those things that they said they would do on behalf of workers and citizens of this country.
Thank you so much, Ms. Thomas. Keep up the good work, comrade, and we stand in solidarity with you and your members and those, of course, in the workforce. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Mikey.